So, Carlitos, you've never met Paul Clemson.
Well, let me figure out Zoom. Oh my God, so many people. I was only seeing 3. I was like, shit. I clicked this thing and boom! Like every person that's ever played in Mary just popped up on my screen.
For context, Paul Clemson mixed marriage way back.
Oh.
And so he has also been with us forever. And then for a reverse contest, Carlitos was the bass player on our early EPs before marriage.
Wow.
Yeah. And so we have here the first.
He's the first very bass player.
I'm one of you. Can we talk about the lyrics? Can I go into some things that I want to talk about?
Yeah, no.
All right, so
feel free to dive
yes?
in. You're running the show.
All right, so
the starting point for the lyrics was to ask an unanswerable question, and to me, asking unanswerable questions and trying to answer them with metaphor or weird comparisons between one thing or another is the whole purpose of poetry. And so yeah, it was a game that we played, and it was like the surrealist word game that we played, that sort of paired individual ideas with individual ideas, and then sort of came together in a collaborative way. But the collaborative way was, hey, here's this unanswerable thing, and then here is something beautiful, and here is something that we think is a unique comparison between two things. And
yeah, I think if I was fair with what I thought, you know, all jokes aside, like with what I thought was actually the case is that it was more of the what, and then I should probably finish that idea first. Like, it was taking something and saying, okay, this part of it was random and kind of directed, and now we were asked to play with that. And well, if that's not just a definition for art, then what is, right?
Yeah.
You're being given something to just play with. But I want to
add about the process, which is the cut and paste was actually, it's not as random as it may seem. So we would start our band meetings in 2015 and 2016 leading up to that recording session, and maybe even past that, as we had just the musical ideas, but not lyrics yet. And so for band meetings, we would open with a few minutes of this process, this game, but this creative process. And sometimes there was like a stated theme. So we would all be sitting there on the phone together, pre-Zoom. And, you know, like, I mean, I can, like, talking about it, I can almost smell like the exhaust fumes of the bus, you know, like going past my apartment in Chicago. And, you know, I think that, well, you know, Joey and Matt or Shane may not have had that same thing, but I mean, in that moment, there was definitely kind of a spiritual thing happening when we were all being quiet together. and kind of tuning into something together with the intent of bringing it together, knowing that it would be a fuller picture than if when I try to sit down and write lyrics and paint a picture that's, you know, as wonderfully wild and varied as the world, you know, it often fails. But when I do that with other people, it's amazing the way that things, the reality of things being presented more in a more complex way is more true to what is.
Yeah. Like everybody come up with a metaphor about the loudness of the sun. And yeah, somehow those metaphors weave themselves together. So
well, there's also a intended or unintended invocation to what our Native American ancestors would just call the possibility of chance and chaos through the coyote, right? And art requires that. So as I allowed my disappointment with that little, you know, kind of notice to seep in, there was a lot of reconciliation that I was hoping for in this little thing. And you guys are definitely tapping on it. I think, to be honest, though we've been friends, you know, over the years, it's really hard to follow patterns, say, of a spiritual journey, right?
yeah.
And so when I sit down with the record, I go back on so many conversations and I'm wondering what declaration will take place. Where are they really at? For all the gaps of not knowing where you're at, I'm hoping in this lyric to come across something. And I did. I think it really, you know, the line that I was nodding at the wrong part because I'm still catching up with time, as they say. But this line, the pine needles paving the quiet road to nowhere. You know, I would say if prayer works 9 times out of 10, it's just great hook, pop. Okay, great. For all of the abstractedness that God can be, can we just say God? You know, like, okay, you need a line right there in the middle of all these lyrics that like can connect and say, hey, we're actually talking about something. But where you really got me was, you know, that the world filled with light when intelligence learned to feel. So you guys are playing a game, and that's where I really believe in that magical experience that Lorca would call the duende, that just comes in the room, right? You're going through this game and the creative process is always like that too. If it's just music, right? And all of a sudden somebody hits one thing when the other was on the other chord and and they're like, oh, that's it, right? And so now you're just saying, okay, we do this. We've been doing this for 20 years musically. Let's do it with words. Okay, we just start playing and boom, duende comes in the room.
I'm glad you pointed out that line, because that to me is sort of the center of the song, and in a lot of ways the center of the record. I think there's another song that has a similar feeling. I think we even pitched a version of that lyric as the album title. But the idea of the world filled with light, when intelligence learned to feel. I'll also add, I think that's a great point where the word game comes into play in the best possible way, because it's like one of our sentences, or a version of our sentences, when intelligence learned to feel, and then that's the end stop. When intelligence learned to feel is like a really beautiful idea to me. But then to hear it in the song, it's when intelligence learned to feel the pine needles. And so there's that great enjambment that takes place with the pine needles. And so the pine needles paving the quiet road to nowhere is to me, yeah, these are two ideas that came together in a way that I could never have planned. Like if I was writing lyrics on my own, I could have never tried to come up with something so beautiful together. And it's stuff like that to me, this was it's hands down the most collaborative experience I think that we've had as a band.
The world filled with light.
want to know about the bass tone, because I think that's very characteristic of the track. And how did you come about that? Or was it because this actually has to do with the greater question of the whole record, but I'll start micro, in the sense that when you're going into a new record after having made so many and in so many different areas, there's things that you're still wishing from, you know, the lyric end, from the production end, from the, you know, the heaviness of the record. You know, I want to talk about the whole record, but in terms of bass tone, was it something that you stumbled upon or something that you had been hearing in like various tracks and then like it hadn't fit in a Barry song, you know, which is like pretty fucking amazing. In all of these songs, I haven't been able to do this fucking thing that I want to do on the bass, and it's gonna be on this song. Or how was that experience?
Yeah,
I'll start by saying I'm so excited for Shane's answer to this.
Yeah,
question.
that's really funny. So when it comes to tone, like it's not just like I have a vision of what the bass tone is going to look like. So the first thing is, PK, what was the bass amp we had in the studio? Do you remember that amp we
Fender
had?
Bassman.
Yeah,
Fender Bassman, which was just the amp that Paul could get when we flew to Nashville, right?
Oh, okay.
And so the bass that I was playing was the bass that somebody brought. Again, it's a collective decision, right? The first tone decision that I made on it was just going through a Sans amp pedal and cranking up the gain on it, right? But then when we go to first start mixing this album at G Bluey Studio, Joey and PK can talk about this. We re-tracked everything. Like or that's not the right word. What did we
reamped? Yeah, we reamped it.
Revamped it.
So it had already been recorded and you put it through different processors?
Yeah. So I think that in the track there's the DI, there's the Bassman, and then we also reamped it through like a vintage tube Ampeg of some sort. So all three of those tracks are sort of playing in.
It's really only because Shane had to take up more space.
Yeah. And
like he was
and
almost the rhythm guitar.
I think there's some really fun quality to this song in that Matt notably like went and hung out with family while we were tracking this song live. And so it was like, oh, Shane has to play a greater role, and also Joey has to play a greater role.
Wow.
And maybe
all of
Paul
these
has
things,
to play a greater role. But
what's
like,
the name of the card game you guys were playing?
The Exquisite Corpse is the
so all of this just sounds like Exquisite Corpse.
Yeah, it's totally even in the musical moment.
You know what, just to take it a little bit further, like I love that like somebody like Barry would be like, it's just not extract enough. You got any Exhibit Corpse? I think it'll do for album 20. All right, listen, guys. So I got. But
anyway, so yeah, I think that there was a moment with this song, and I sort of remember, like, oh yeah, the bass is gonna shine on this song. It has to, and I think like I'm obsessed with the slide on the bass, and so my memory of this song was me sort of being like, no, Shane, you got to slide on this rhythm. Or, no,
Carl,
you got
probably
this note, or
you could probably sympathize with this. When you're a bass player in Barry, there's a lot of opinions that happen. Tone wise, note wise, slide wise.
Pretty much, you didn't do much. You're there. Your name is bass, but it really came together through collaboration.
Yeah,
like everything on this record.
Exactly.
Did you use your shoulders? The bass was hanging from my shoulders, and they just made it happen.
From PG's shoulders. I didn't even use my shoulders.
Yeah, but literally, like through the process of collaboration, like I think it was like a very weird. To me, this is the Beatles, like, but like, yeah,
it's so
like,
funny that you would mention that one, because I'm like still on "Come Together."
Yeah, that's the song. That's what I'm singing.
That's the one you were humming.
Yeah, we were singing the same thing.
What are you, like, plucking around like some grassroots hillbilly banjo version that you dug up from your brother-in-law's drawer? What the? We're gonna play that back, ladies and gentlemen, because that is being recorded.
So since Matt wasn't there to record or to have keys, you know, and there's a lot of songs on this album that are completely keyboard driven. And so this was, since Matt stepped out, that did give that chance for something very different to happen. And aside from the like the fullness that the sax parts might give it kind of in the recording, it's still, I think it's probably like the most stripped down or second most or third most stripped down song on the record. So it feels very.
This one is stripped down?
In terms of the layers,
no,
like,
that gets me excited. Like, you know,
there's
this,
you know,
Yeah.
and
It
it's
feels-
also
it feels-
worth noting that he's saying this is stripped down in comparison to what's
I mean, the chorus, I think Paul's right, is like 4 guys in a room. It's like guitar, keyboard playing the same part as a guitar player, bass, and drums.
Wow. But also, again, I'm coming out of like this, like going through, like you guys can, when you strip down, it can get pretty stripped down where there's like a beat every other minute and a half.
Yeah, yeah.
Just to know, like, going into the record, what were some things that were starved, and what were some things that you wanted to visit again?
And so for me, it was like, oh yeah, let's make a song that is a total pop driven U2 Coldplay ripoff, but still obviously is totally fucked up in a way that doesn't make sense with the pop world. And so that to me is what Sound Sun is.
I think that's very for me, it's very reminiscent of even a song that goes as far back as 58.
Yeah.
Where you could equally say, man, that's really like pop oriented, you know? And then all of a sudden you realize there's nothing pop to it. And sadly, you know, like in many ways, it's just like this time signature, you know, intricacy that takes place behind a very, the correlation is in the melody, right? And in the vocal approach, that is right there. And then all the other stuff that's happening around it is what, you know, sets them the world apart.
Yeah, it's got the verses have the Beatles, the like kings of pop from 50 years ago, and then the choruses have U2 and Coldplay dancing, literally Chris Martin dancing around, which is the, you know, pop rock carried into the 21st century. So
Matt, I'm curious what your thoughts were on this once you got your hands on it.
Yeah,
I loved it. I thought it was great. Everything you talked about, how you provided a new opportunity to explore different avenues for creation of for lines, parts, and for a song in general, it was just really fantastic. And I love the bass part you guys came up with. It's really catchy, and I like the part that Joy came up with, the guitar part. I thought it was just really fantastic and really fun to work with.
PK, you want to talk a little about the space and like, kind of how you influenced what we were doing?
Well, the space itself that we got to record in was an old bank vault in Nashville. That was like a 1980s ATM collection area back when there were, you know, checks and money that they had to count every day. And some of our designer friends picked it up and made their offices in it, graphic design offices. And was it like over July 4th or something? Because everybody was gone.
Yeah.
It was just it was just Barry in the house. I think we used their kitchen. The guys stayed at our house in Nashville, but back to like, you know, how big the chorus is, and then every Matt part, since it was just a few things that could be made, it could be put like right up in the mix. Same with the bass, you know, it's like there's so much space that everything can be loud.
Yeah.
Coming to this full circle to be able to track it was like each Barry member had to have a voice. It's just like, oh, Paul happens to play the drums, Joey happens to sing and play guitar, but everybody speaks into, you know, where the beat hits, what the bass tone is, what Matt might want to think about. I mean, Joey usually takes the reins to keep it moving if things end up in the weeds, but everybody was the drummer, everybody was the bass player, everybody was the keyboard player. And then that came out. The mixing was easy at that point. I mean, we were into small minutia things very quickly on the mix side just because it was already all there.